Welcome into another edition of the Gig'em 24/7 Sports Podcast. I am Andrew Hattersley, joined as always by Brian Perroni. Brian, how's everything going?
Oh, it's going well. This is a nice Monday or Tuesday or whatever day this goes live.
Yeah, we're coming off a big weekend with the NFL draft wrapping up on Saturday. We'll touch on that. 4 A&M players went, and that and several others ended up as undrafted free agents or getting tryouts. It was a big weekend as well for A&M baseball, and then A&M basketball. Looking at Monday morning, picking up a commitment from Mississippi State transfer Anderson Garcia.
I'll have a deep deep
You'll have a
analysis
deep
on that
dive
one.
into that one.
As a big basketball insider, I'm going to give you guys. You stick around. I'm going to give you all some.
Yeah, you
some
stick around.
inside info
Brian's going to
there.
bring out the whiteboard and diagnose exactly
Yes.
what he saw from play by play from Anderson
Wait,
Garcia.
what position did he play again?
In today's day and age, Brian, you can just stick with positional. Everybody's positionalist.
I know, but I
Everybody
don't
can
know
play.
his position, so I got to look that
He's
up
like
before I can say
he's
he's
like
a
a
great
3.
blocker.
He's like a
Oh, he's
3.
a 3. Oh, he does Oh, he's all around. It's
He's an
stuff.
all around guy.
Okay.
Guards the 1,
Big
2,
time.
4.
Big time. You can quote me on that.
Yeah, well, everybody in today's day and age, it's like they. I've even heard some football coaches kind of start talking about that. Now, guy's a positionless guy. Well, he's got to play some position. So, where does he play?
Oh yeah.
So we'll talk about that, and then a couple A&M targets also cut down their list this weekend. So we'll touch on that and kind of look at where the board stands right now, heading into official visits. But Brian, starting at the NFL draft, I mean, we have to start with Kenyon Green going number 15 overall to the Houston Texans. Really cool opportunity for him to stay close to home and end up with the Texans. And with the way that offensive line has looked in the past couple of years, there's definitely a path forward to playing early and having a chance to really contribute there. And I think it's a good pickup for the Texans. They're obviously very familiar with what he's done in college and just a super versatile guy that really deserves where he ended up.
Yeah, it did surprise me a little bit that he went where he did. I mean, I don't think any of the mocks had him, quite that high. What was it, 15?
15.
People had him. If they had him in the first round, they had him, in the mid-20s or so. But the Texans obviously had a lot of chance to see him in person, see him, play a lot, knew a lot about him with him being from Houston, him being at A&M. Also, the Texans draft was like very heavy. It's almost like they didn't leave the region because the first pick, Derek Stingley from LSU, Kenyon Green. After that, Jalen Petrie from Baylor, who is from Houston, John Mechie from Alabama, Christian Harris from Alabama. Christian Harris was a one-time A&M commit who's from Baton Rouge, and then their final pick, Austin DeCulis from LSU, who went to Cy-Fair. It's like they're like, all right, man, we're excited to get these guys back in Houston. So
Yeah,
but it is an interesting thing. Kenyon Green, he was at Cam Dewberry's announcement back in December when Cam committed to A&M during the early signing period, and he was there and he was on crutches, and I don't think he necessarily wanted it out at the time. He had something done, I think, on his knee. I don't want to say for sure. I don't really remember. But then this past week, we saw a lot of speculation come out that, there's some injury and some surgery issues and he might drop. But when the draft is nearing, you hear that stuff all the time. Teams leak stuff to try and maybe, sneak a guy in later than others, may have. So who knows what's true and what's not but I thought there was a chance that he could, somebody could get an absolute steal if he fell out of the first round. But the Texans traded back 2 picks, but traded back to take him and took him high. So, good for Kenyon Green, man. Go get paid, go play for the hometown team. Step in next to Laramie Tunsil, assuming he plays guard. He could play, I guess, tackle opposite Laramie Tunsil. I'm not sure exactly what they have him for, but good fit.
Well, I think that's one of the big things is when you look at what he did at A&M. I mean, he played everywhere, and I mean, he really kind of was one of the stabilizing presence along that offensive line, and it's kind of a godsend that he was able to play, out of tackle, out of guard, and that's going to benefit him down the road. And how about that draft party as well? And just, I mean, there were people up on the second level and going up. It was a really cool night to see that. And it's a really good spot for him. Getting to
Makes me
see.
feel pretty old because I interviewed him as a freshman in high school. So, but you know what? Actually, they completely unrelated to him. But I'm feeling really old because the first class I covered, starting with when they were sophomores in high school, there's a guy who's already had an NFL career and retired, not because of injuries, just retired. In Andrew Luck, and he's been retired what, like 3 years now. It's like, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's you and I talked about, you went out to McKinney High School and Marcus Shavers is the
Yep.
head coach there this week. I covered him as a recruit. Like, time is passing by and I'm not a fan. This needs to
I
slow
know
down a bit.
we talked about that, and he goes, me and Brian Perroni go way back, and I was like, oh, yeah, I know you covered his recruitment and all that. Now he's a head coach, man. Now he's rolling on there at McKinney and got them going. So yeah,
Okay,
man.
sorry. Didn't
I
mean
don't
to
want to
take it
call
off.
you. I don't want to
Kenyon
call.
Green. Kenyon Green's a good player.
I don't want to call you old.
No, I'll call myself old. It's fine. I used to be a young buck in this industry.
Yeah.
Now I'm the wily old veteran.
um, and then just moving on, and I am looking at DeMarvin Leal, and he goes off the board in round 3 to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Um, Kind of interesting how many former Aggies are kind of building up in Pittsburgh now. He'll join Dan Moore and he'll join Buddy Johnson, and
Jay Sternberger actually is now with them.
Jay
After signing
Sternberger, and then
a
Aaron
deal in the
Hay,
offseason.
and then Tyrese Johnson ends up signing an undrafted free agent deal with the Steelers too. So they're loading up on Aggies, and I think for him, I think he's going to head up to Pittsburgh with a bit of a chip on his shoulder. Maybe fell a little bit further than
I
where
mean,
he
at this time a year ago, he was a shoe-in
Yep.
first round pick. People said, possibly even number 1 overall. But then you also had a guy like Sam Howell, who a lot of people had as the top guy in the
Yep.
draft. Sam Howell falls to the 5th round, so I mean, it's sort of a crapshoot when you do it that early. But yeah, I don't think Liao, even when he declared, expected to be a 3rd round pick.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that I think when you go through the draft process, more and more questions kind of emerge. Like, where is he a best fit? Where does he play? But he's going to head into a situation in Pittsburgh, and again, another opportunity to maybe see some early playing time along that defensive line. I know they kind of need guys along there, and so now it's time to go. And I think he brings some of the same stuff to the Steelers that he brought at A&M, that he can play inside, he can play outside, and that versatility. And we'll need to get stronger, and that's probably one of the big things that when you look at what NFL teams were looking for, that'll probably be the one big thing for him. But
his speed too. He had actually one of like the most probably disappointing 40 times. But I mean, how many times is he going to be asked to run downfield?
Exactly.
He seems quick enough. He was a player at A&M. He made plays. He popped on film.
Exactly.
So I'm not too concerned about that.
It seemed like, just looking at some of these, Michael Clemens was a guy who seemed to really, have probably the best testing numbers of anybody and really help himself. And, that's one tip your hat to him in the year that he had as a senior. And then, what he put together, at the pro day, at the combine, to end up going in the 4th round to the New York Jets is really, really cool. And, just kudos to him because he really built off this past year, coming back for another year and was able to stay healthy. I think that was one of the biggest keys. And
this is a guy that came out of Saxony, I believe he went to.
Yeah.
Not only did he have to go junior college, he was a walk-on junior college. He wasn't even really recruited by Cisco. And out of all the JCs in Texas, most of them are in East Texas, but Cisco is out there between Fort Worth and Abilene, and just does not attract the talent that the other Texas JUCOs do. So he goes out there to Cisco, red shirts, then plays and gets an offer at A&M, and then is hurt a couple years at A&M in a COVID year. I mean, I really think he had 8 seasons of college eligibility, but I mean, it paid off. I mean, 4th round is good money, and that means you don't cut 4th round picks in after minicamp. They make the roster. So
yeah, and the coaching that he's going to get, the specific coaching, he's gonna have a chance to really succeed there. And I mean, it's just kind of amazing when you look at it. If you looked at this time last year, speaking of the mock drafts, and you had Michael Clemens as the third guy off the board, I'm not sure anybody would have really said that between Isaiah
Nobody had
Spiller.
that last week. I mean, it was
Yeah,
surprising when he got
yeah.
taken for Spiller.
But he was a guy that really helped himself throughout the draft process and ends up in a really good spot. And then the fourth guy selected was Isaiah Spiller. He goes to the West Coast to the LA Chargers and joins a really good offense there. I think they're going to find quite a few ways to use him. They've got a couple running backs in that room, but I think it's a really good spot for him as well to join kind of an offense. When I was looking it up, was the 5th ranked offense in the league last year in terms of points scored. And so, he's a guy, maybe again, his top end speed kind of hurt him during the draft process, but another guy that was just really, productive at A&M and dependable 3-year starter, and has a chance to really stick around for quite a while with the Chargers.
No, yeah, I actually thought the Texans might take him when they took Dameon Pierce out of Florida early on the 3rd day. Pierce is that same sort of mold, bigger back, not, a 4'6" guy, just like Spiller is. But Spiller's not going to have to be the guy right away in with LA, but he has a chance to become the guy. And, they seem pretty excited about it. I know everybody plays up their draft and yeah, we got all the guys we wanted, and
Exactly.
and they fell to us, and other teams didn't know what they were doing. But I really do think that they were excited that Spiller was still around when they picked in the 4th round. Nobody had him. Some people had him sneak or in the 2nd, and some even say possibly sneaking into the 1st. But I think, like you said, it's that top end speed that likely cost him that. But he can catch, and that's the huge deal in the NFL if you can show you can catch.
Yeah, he can definitely be a receiver out of the backfield. And I think the other thing that was kind of maybe a knock on him was his pass blocking probably needs to still get a little bit better. But, when you talk about a guy with looking at the draft coverage, I thought they put it well with his vision and his ability to kind of see holes. And I even kind of look at that Arkansas game last year, kind of sitting from behind and seeing what he was going up against in that game. He made a lot out of nothing in that game, just in terms of the push that Arkansas got, and his ability to kind of see holes and find space. I think will certainly give him a chance to succeed in the NFL. And then in terms of undrafted,
so actually one more on that. It's going to be weird next year because A&M is going to have, if he leaves early, going to have potentially the exact opposite back in Devon Achane, who has the speed, but you wonder, can he hold up to the pounding in the NFL? So, it's just going to be interesting. We're hearing all these, the potential cons on Spiller now, and it's going to be, like I said, the exact opposite potential cons on Achane next year if he declares. I mean, you never know.
Now, that was the thing is, Jimbo Fisher, that'll be interesting to see, because Jimbo Fisher was asked about it during spring practice about whether he thought that Devon Achane could be a 20 to 25 carry guy. And he certainly believes so. And so it's going to be interesting to kind of watch him take over as the lead back this year. Just obviously the speed is obvious. Just what he's doing this track season has been really, really impressive. And so, it's going to be interesting to watch him take over as the lead back. And like you said, kind of the contrast in styles, it could look a little different. And then quickly looking at some of the undrafted free agents, I think there were a couple guys that left early that maybe thought they were going to hear their names called. And Jalen Weidemeyer was a guy that was on a lot of mock drafts at this time last year, and, didn't have a great run through, the combine and pro days and things like that. And, kind of battled drops last season. And he ends up as an undrafted free agent going to Buffalo. Tyree Johnson ends up going to Pittsburgh. Leon O'Neal ended up signing a deal with the San Francisco 49ers. Jameer Johnson is heading to the Packers, and Seth Small is heading to the Indianapolis Colts, and Aaron Hansford ends up with the Dallas Cowboys.
One more, Jaden Peavy. Where did he go?
Jaden Peavy ends up with the Tennessee Titans. That's the other one, which was cool, by the way. I don't know for those who saw it on Twitter, but Looked like Jaden Peavy actually played Pee Wee football with Pop Warner football with he was a Tennessee Titan when he played Pop Warner, and
Oh,
so kind of posted some pictures and said he actually gets to do it for real now. So for that, out of that group, which one kind of sticks out as a guy maybe that has the best opportunity to make a roster and have a career for you?
okay. I'm gonna say it's got. Well, there's two. Starting with Weidemeyer. I mean, Weidemeyer, if he plays like he did as a sophomore, he is an NFL starter. If he plays like he did as a junior, he's a practice squad guy. So I think teams had to balance that out. And then when you had testing times, he was never a guy that was going to test off the charts. That just wasn't going to be the case. But we've seen that ability. We've seen him get open. We've seen the great hands. We've seen him as a red zone threat. Now, once again, he regressed a bit as a junior, and then his testing wasn't good. But um, the one thing about late round draft picks, most players would rather be undrafted than go in the seventh round or maybe late sixth, because they can pick their spots. They can say, hey, who's got the best depth? And they can also look for contracts that, hey, who's willing to give me, a signing bonus, something guaranteed. Well, Weidemeyer, had to look at, the Buffalo uh, depth chart, because, he was a popular guy right after the draft wrapped up. He was getting a ton of calls. And then the other guy, Leon O'Neal. I felt bad for Leon. He was,
I do too.
Leon is a vocal guy. He's been that way ever since we covered him in high school. Has a lot of confidence in himself. But, it's still, he seemed genuinely excited about the draft. And then when he didn't get picked, it just, sort of hurt. But he's going to San Francisco. Great. Like, there's an opportunity for him to make that roster there. And also, they clearly liked him because they gave him not only a $10,000 signing bonus, but it was $50,000 guaranteed, which does not happen with undrafted free agents very often. I mean, they have to be really high on him, which means there was probably a bit of a bidding war for Leon as well. Because, I mean, he's proven he can play. Yeah, he had his ups and downs during his career at A&M, but when he's on, he's on. And then he matured too. I mean, he was the Aggie Heart Award winner. That's the biggest honor that you can get at A&M. And if you would have told me when Leon was a freshman or sophomore that he would have been the Aggie Heart guy, I would have taken your bet and given you incredible odds on that one. So, just watching that maturity both on and off the field, I think he could probably be a pretty good player with San Francisco.
Yeah, the key for me with Jalen Weidemeyer is he's going to need to contribute on special teams as well. But if you look outside of Dawson Knox, there's OJ Howard and Tommy Sweeney weren't huge factors in the passing game. And so if Jalen Weidemeyer can kind of show that during the preseason, there's an opportunity to build a role there and make his way onto a roster. The other one for me, I agree with you on a Leon O'Neal. I think he's a guy that folks are just going to be rooting for. He's just his passion for the school and he was obviously a bit of a polarizing guy at times, but he got better as he went on at A&M. The more he matured, the more he locked in and truly bought into the A&M system. He got better as time went along, and is a guy that has a ton of experience playing in the best league in the country, and I think that's pretty valuable heading off to the 49ers. I think he's another guy that'll be asked whatever he's asked to do, he'll do. And if
oh yeah, he's going to be flying down on special teams. That guy's going to be a headhunter on special teams.
He is going to be flying on special teams, looking to make any play that he can. The other one I would note though is Aaron Hansford, and the fact that the Cowboys kind of made a late push to get him in. There was some early talk about him going to the Bills, and the Cowboys kind of came in there late.
Washington as well. There was some talk about him joining his hometown team.
Yeah, Washington, and for Dallas to kind of swoop in there late. And he's another guy with his athleticism, I think, can make an impact on special teams. And so those are a couple of the early guys that kind of stick out as those who have a chance to potentially make a roster. We're gonna switch gears after this break and touch on the A&M baseball and talk a little recruiting when we come back from this short break. All right, welcome back into the Gig'em 24/7 Sports Podcast. Brian, going to talk a little baseball. Another big series win for A&M on the road at Vanderbilt, their fourth straight series win, and now up in the polls to number 13 overall. And we talked about it a week ago, but now very much in play to host potentially a regional, and they just continue to get better as the season goes along. Another kind of offensive explosion on Sunday. Seems to be a thing now where on Sundays and rubber games, they kind of pour it on early and get the bats going. But just another really impressive weekend. And what Jim Schlossnagel's been able to do in his first year to potentially have this team in the conversation to host a regional is just absolutely extremely impressive.
Yeah, if you could just we could just skip this part and you could just take my comments from last week and the whole
Yeah.
conversation, because once again, Nathan Detmer, 2 weeks ago, SEC Pitch of the Week, last week, dominant. This week, dominant again on, in the opener on Thursday, and that was huge. A&M taking that opener from Vandy. So him, Jacob Polish, just keeps coming in key situations. Now he does usually give up a hit or two, but then just he gets the bases loaded and just, oh yeah, let me just work out of that. You're 3 straight strikeouts or whatever. He's just been nails and has been able to eat innings. I mean, he's going 3-4 innings each time, and that is huge when you come to the postseason. A guy that can take over innings like that. And then Moo Menifee started out the season not so great. Now, 2 weeks in a row, he is just, or really, I think the last 3 series, he's just had some long relief outings that have been outstanding. He gave up 1 run, I think, on 1 hit. And he may have given up a second hit right before coming out this week. But yeah, just 1 run and, an error contributed to that run. So he is, the fact that he's turned it on is could make A&M pretty dangerous when the postseason comes around, because like I said, the starters are key, but if you can get guys that can come in, even if a starter goes 6 innings, then a guy can go the final 3. But let's say a starter struggles a little bit, like they have the past couple Sundays, he can come in and just go, not go the distance, but he can go 5 or 6 innings without a problem.
And to me, that's been one of the biggest things outside of the bats really getting going and putting up some huge numbers scoring wise the past couple of weeks. The bullpen being able to really close some of these games out early in the year was really shaky. The games against Penn, and you wondered if that might be kind of a weakness, but the arms have just gotten better as the year has gone along. Guys like Menifee and Polish, and it's put this team in a really good spot and heading into with the postseason just around the corner. And they're up to number 12 in the computer RPI rankings, and so just everything with this team is kind of trending in an upward direction, which is what you want to see in year one.
Oh yeah, I mean, mid-season, nobody had this team in the tournament.
No,
I would not have thought. It was like, okay, Schlossnagel's doing an okay job. Year one, he's got a lot of new faces. Not only is this team in the tournament, pretty much a lock in the tournament now. If it ended right now, they would almost assuredly host a regional. And the final 3 series of the regular season, 2 are at home. The next 2 are at home,
yeah.
and all 3 are against unranked opponents. So as long as A&M wins each series, takes care of business as they're supposed to, they could even afford to drop, 2 games in one of them. But they could be a super regional host, which means one of the top 8 seeds nationally. And I can't even imagine what the odds were on that, before the season. But even mid-season, if I would have told you or told anybody, hey, yeah, this team, they're going to host a super regional, I would have been laughed out of the building. I mean, it's incredible the turnaround that they've been. And I think it all starts with Detmer. I mean, Detmer has been just lights out as a Friday night starter, has been he's gone up against, Connor Noland and outdueled him. I mean, just been really, really good.
And to set that up, I mean, that's basically, the starts that they've got out of him. You pick up the first game of the series, and then you're just trying to maybe pick up one more the rest of the way and win the series. I mean, he's just put A&M in such a good spot and especially set the bullpen up well for the rest of the weekend. I mean, if he struggled, that would have a ripple effect through the rest of the weekend. And so just what he's been able to do eating innings and delivering quality start after quality start has been really impressive. Like you said, the schedule sets up really well going forward for them now, and I think that's one of the other things is really when you look at where they've kind of gotten hot and caught fire is through the toughest part of their schedule. I mean, they've played Arkansas, Georgia, Vanderbilt, beat Texas, beat up on Dallas Baptist. I mean, they've beaten some really really good teams and put up some offensive numbers while they've done it.
No, for sure. I mean, it's the bats were a little quiet the first two games this weekend, but pitching was there, so everybody's doing their job. And when the bats turn on, I mean, what did Targach had 2 home runs? Now he's double digits. Troy Clonch went, had 4 hits on Sunday.
Yeah.
Targach had 6 RBIs. So, and those are, you never know who you're going to count on. It could be Jack Moss and Dylan Rock one game. It could be those guys. It could be Post. It could be Minich. I mean, really anybody can step up. And A&M hasn't had that number of playmakers in the past few years. I mean, like Will Frizzell was one guy, and then before that, Shoemake was, and, one guy. And so the fact that A&M has just a team full of guys that are coming up clutch I mean, that's what you need for a deep postseason run.
No doubt. And, switching gears a little bit to the football side of things now, on the recruiting trail, a couple of A&M targets released top schools this week, some top 9, some top 10s, which I know fans just love seeing those come across. But one of the notable ones was Jonte Cook. He put out a top 5 of A&M, Texas, Florida, Michigan, and Jackson State.
Okay, do we
Notable,
buy? Somebody's missing.
yeah,
Alabama. Do we buy
notable,
that
yeah.
Alabama's not in it?
No, I do not buy that Alabama is not still in this, especially coming off a visit. I don't think you can count out Alabama yet, especially when I talked to him. It would
Yeah,
be
you
two
were not
weeks
there
ago.
that long ago.
I was out there probably 2 weeks ago, and I asked him what about Alabama, and he said Alabama's Alabama. He's like, there's just no other way I could really say it, and it also sounded like when he looked at that receiver room, he saw an opportunity for early playing time. And so that was the other thing that was interesting to me is, Nick Saban kind of pointed out to him, I think it was on um, I think it was the national championship team with Tua and Devontae Smith about, just the number of freshmen that he had on the field at one time when they won that national championship. And, at the time that seemed to really be something that kind of intrigued Jonte Cook. And so I would not rule Alabama out. Although I do think, the two constants during this recruitment have been A&M and Texas.
Yeah.
And I still think that kind of remains who I would have if heading down the stretch of this. Although I think this could last probably into the late summer, fall, probably with Cook. And Florida is another one I would caution not ruling out. He's got a good relationship with that coaching staff, and so it's going to be really interesting to watch. Simply put, when it comes to A&M, they need Evan Stewart to have a really productive year, and if they do that, it's going to really, really help.
Yeah, I mean, Jonte is a similar player, and he knows that. So yeah, if he sees Evan
he's
Stewart put up numbers, then
when we talked, I think it was about a month ago. I said, "What are you looking for in the spring game?" And he said, "I want to see them get Evan Stewart the ball because if they get Evan Stewart the ball, I know going there they'll be able to get me the ball as well." That's kind of just simply put what he's looking at. And Damian Craig and the A&M staff, he's got some really good relationships. He said A&M is probably one of the best relationships he's got. Now he loves Austin, loves the city, and so. Texas is going to be in this very much until the end as well. And, he's got a good relationship with Arch Manning. So depending on how that shakes out as well, that'll be another factor to watch in this recruitment. But, I think still Texas and Texas A&M are kind of the two teams at the top of that. And we'll probably be battling. And
yeah. So I had pointed out something on the board about that recruitment. The fact that he left out Alabama. Now, again, we're not discounting Alabama, but the fact that they're not quite as high as the others, that could bode pretty well for A&M with another guy, Malik Muhammad, national top 100
really
cornerback. Close. Yeah, at South Oak Cliff, those guys are close and have talked about playing together. Now, package deals aren't really a thing, but guys can recruit each other and can talk about it, and they can end up at the same place. So Malik Muhammad is pretty much down to A&M and Alabama. So
Yeah.
if you don't have Jonte Cook, recruiting him to Alabama, he could be recruiting him to A&M or vice versa. Malik Muhammad recruiting Jonte to A&M. Now, also Texas got a commitment from Trey Wisner, who's now at DeSoto and is a high school teammate of Jonte.
Yeah.
Now he's a new teammate, so doesn't know him quite as well as Malik, who's not a teammate but has been up there forever. But or Manny, I guess people call Malik Muhammad. If you ever hear people saying Manny, that's him.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so I mean, it's just sort of some interesting dynamics with the release of that list and what it could mean and who could have a pull and who could have the influence there.
Yeah, and that's one. I mean, early on in the recruit in his recruiting process, Jonte Cook told me he was going to take basically all of his visits with Manny Muhammad, and it doesn't end up always playing out like that. Schedules don't line up and things like that. But it just speaks to kind of like you said, the relationship that they have together is pretty strong, and I could definitely see that being a factor as you head into the fall. I don't think Jonte Cook's going to be a guy that's in any hurry to make any sort of a decision. And I asked him a couple weeks ago about official visits. Didn't seem to really have any that he had in mind quite yet, although I would expect A&M and Texas to get official visits for sure, but didn't have it in mind yet. I think he wants to see how the seasons play out for both A&M and Texas. And so that could be something to kind of monitor. And then, kind of looking at the offensive line as well. Connor Stroh was another guy that released a top 5. He's got his official visits set for the summer and then is going to make a decision after that. There was a question on the board yesterday about, where he kind of fits on the A&M offensive line front. I think with a guy like him and his A&M ties, when you extend an offer, you kind of are ready to, pursue him.
Yeah, you have
and
to be ready just in case as a legacy. What if he would have committed on the spot? So yeah, when they extended that offer, it wasn't like, hey, now we can say we did it and
Yeah,
hold him off for a bit. So
I think that's a guy, and it'll be interesting to see how that one plays out. Just looking at, we talked about this last week, but just I don't think in today's day and age, with the way offensive lines are kind of taking shape, he's a guy with size that's a massive body, and you try to work with him on footwork and things like that, and you can't teach that size though, and so I think that's why schools are kind of looking at him as a guy that they can take and develop for a couple of years and potentially have like a tackle body. And so, I mean, that's really where I think things stand with him. And then Ian Reed is another guy. I know you spoke to him probably a couple of weeks ago about A&M, and he stopped by for a spring practice. A&M made a great impression on him, and it sounds like he's gonna try to cut his list down again before the season starts, and then make a decision towards the early signing period. But A&M could well work their way in the mix with that, as well as a rugby player as well. Interesting enough, which I think is kind of an interesting side to him.
Yeah, two guys. I think we talked about it last week too. Two guys, not tackles. Well, one plays tackle in high school, but not tackles at the next level at all. But A&M is in really good position for Harris Sewell, top 100 offensive guard out of Odessa Permian, and TJ Shanahan, top 100 offensive guard out of Austin Westlake. Shanahan did play tackle this year, but it's not likely at the next level. I mean, he's just a big old mauler on the inside and looks the part. A&M has a real good shot of landing both those guys. Both should be on official visits that June 10th weekend with most of the commits. So, that's big for them to get them in. So A&M does need those tackles. And you were talking about Connor Stroh. Same thing with Isaiah Robinson. I mean, you see a guy that I think he came in at 6'8" at a camp. And he's got the length and everything. And so, coaches see that and say, hey, yeah, let's get him on campus. We'll get that guy ready to play. So, and you're seeing A&M, start to push a lot harder for him. He's going to head down on unofficial visit this month at some point.
Yeah, and that's a guy. I mean, he just picked up an offer from LSU too. So he's continued to add some offers, and has one offensive line MVPs at a couple camps already this spring. And so, and to your point on TJ Shanahan, I was at a game early this fall with him and a coach that had been recruiting him for a long time, and kind of pointed to that point that he's definitely a guard at the next level, but he's going to be a really good one. And I think he's really, really interested in A&M. I I can't stress that enough. When he moved to Austin Westlake, I think kind of the initial thought was, well, he's going to be at Austin Westlake. Texas is just down the street, and he continued to maintain no, A&M's in among my top schools, and
Yeah, I
my
mean, A&M was
deal,
in good shape for him when he was in
yeah,
Orlando. So now
you
that he's,
know,
even closer, hour and a half down the road.
right, and that was the thing is he was, and his relationship was with Josh Henson, but I think he just really likes, Jimbo Fisher and the staff overall there. But I think that was the thing early on was kind of the thought was, well, he's at Austin Westlake, must be a guy that's going to end up at Texas. But he was really, really high, and he was just down the road from A&M as well, and so he made clear about that A&M has always been amongst his top schools, and I think LSU is another school that certainly is in the mix there as well. And you can't discount Florida and some of those other schools that he kind of grew up around. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this summer kind of shakes out on the recruiting front. But and then a guy that I'm going to be out to see early this week, on the Monday and Tuesday front is Marcus Deal, and A&M is another guy. They've kind of looked at him. He has said though that he prefers maybe playing along the defensive line, but he's kind of open to playing wherever a school might need him. But his preference would probably lean towards the defensive line, and so another guy to kind of keep an eye on.
No, yeah, I wish. I mean, really good player on both sides of the ball, but I think his upside on offense is just really, really good. He's taller, but he sort of reminds me a bit of Eric McCoy in that he could play center and be one of those taller centers and be really good. But if his heart's on defense, his heart's on defense. But if that's the case, A&M's probably not likely just because of the defensive line room and then the guys they're in on. But if he's willing to play offensive line, then A&M has just as good a shot as anybody.
No doubt. And speaking of the defensive line, a guy that also released his top list was Sadir Mitchell, and has a really good relationship with Elijah Robinson, kind of that East Coast tie. And he was down at a camp last summer that we both saw him, and he looked really good during that camp. And no, he's always kind of had an eye on A&M as a school that he wanted to get back down for a visit again. So another guy to keep a close eye on that kind of just recently put out a top list.
Yeah, so my guess, he's got an official visit tentatively scheduled for the final weekend in June. My guess at that nose guard position, it's either him or Jarrett Johnson from North Carolina, Jarrett Johnson is, I think I may have said his name wrong. I may have said the wrong name. But out of North Carolina, he was just offered by A&M, and as soon as A&M offered, he said, okay, he had already narrowed his list, but it was like, okay, no, never mind, I have another one, and has the A&M Jamal Jarrett. Sorry, Jamal Jarrett.
Yeah.
That's the name. But both are, he's a nose guard and said A&M's now one of my top schools and he plans to visit. So I would think that Jamal Jarrett or Sadir Mitchell will be the nose guard in this class, and A&M has time to figure out, let's say if both wanted in which one, or if they would take both. But both can play, and both are ones in Elijah Robinson's region, which is an even bigger deal. So he gets to see them up close and in person quite often.
Yeah, and I think that's it's kind of an interesting point on that front, that if both wanted in, I think they would take both. I mean, I think if there's anything we've learned over the past couple of years with Jimbo Fisher and that staff, they will take as many guys to build the trenches as they possibly can.
He would sign 25 defensive linemen if they were all
really
ranked as 5 stars. He wants that recruiting class title too. You think coaches don't notice, but I mean, when Jimbo was hired, he said we'll have a number one or two recruiting class every year. Like, he's well aware of those rankings. Now, he's not going to recruit off of rankings, but if he can juke the system and get himself some more points, I don't think he's averse to doing that.
And even last week, as he's kind of making these rounds on the
coaches nights,
the coaches tours, saw one tweet, we're gonna get the number one class again, and I was like, yep, there he goes. He's back looking at the rankings, and
oh yeah, for sure. He's one. Yeah, some coaches say they don't care about him, don't look at him all. I mean, he definitely is honest about looking at him and caring about him. If for nothing else, like I said, not recruiting off him. He's not choosing who to offer based on the rankings, but he wants that. It gives teams momentum. I mean, when A&M signed the number one class of all time, recruits across the country were talking about that, and
They
you
still
can't
are.
buy that publicity. So
They still are. I mean, there's so many kids that, and the amount of times I've heard the number one class versus what type of season A&M, the 8-4 season that A&M had last year. I don't hear any recruits bring up the number one, like the 8-4 season at all. All I hear them
no, I
talk
actually
about is,
forgot that it was 8-4. I would have
yeah,
told you it was
all I hear kids
9-3 or
talk about,
10-2.
all I hear kids talk about is the fact that they, signed the number one recruiting class. And so, you talk about just the momentum they've built off that. I mean, he does look at rankings and uses it to their advantage. There's absolutely no doubt. So, and just looking finally at, Brian, you can get your whiteboard
No,
out.
yeah, we're talking about highly ranked kids.
Highly ranked.
Tell
Get
me
your
about
whiteboard. Get
what's the
your
name of
whiteboard
my
out.
prospect I'm breaking down?
Yeah. Get your whiteboard out. Let's get
Okay, I'm
let's get the
ready.
1 through 5 going. A&M landed a basketball transfer on Monday morning. Anderson Garcia, a guy that they got a chance to see at the end of the year. He had a career high 14 points against them. He's a guy with that A&M is, when they've looked at the transfer portal with the immediate eligibility, guy that has up to 3 years of eligibility remaining. A&M just loves those types of kids that have multiple years of eligibility that they can develop, and have kind of used up their one transfer year, and that kind of gives stability to the roster. And they kind of know who they're moving forward with. So, I mean, speaking before last season, Buzz Williams kind of talked about that when he talked with Ross Bjork, that was something he talked about, that they thought that was the best way to handle the transfer portal was to kind of have guys that have multiple years of eligibility, be able to work with them. Biggest thing, I think he'll bring length. He's a good defender. And he's going to help on the glass, which, A&M, if they can have guys with length and all that out on the perimeter, that's what they're kind of looking for. So,
Do you think he knew he was trying out whenever he was playing at A&M?
I
think he told his teammates, give me the ball. They're going to have some openings. This is my future home. I mean, come on, his career high. Somebody took notice. You think he was even like on their radar before then? Then they're like, wait, who's this kid that's normal? What do you average? Like 2 points a game or something?
Yeah, but 4 points a game. And
4 points. Yeah, they're like, who's this guy? He's dominating us. We better go get him. We got to get this guy.
Better go get him, and let me show it off on this one right here in front of this coaching staff. And so I would have looked at that press conference to see afterwards about.
I know we're gonna have to go look back. No, there's no tampering, but maybe they had an idea. Maybe they had an idea that he might enter, and he said, "Okay, yeah."
They did not mention him in the press conference, and did not. It was that was senior day, so the talk was obviously about Quentin Jackson, but kind of went back when I was looking at writing my story and things to build around. I'm like, did somebody ask about Anderson Garcia during the press conference?
I know. It's like, did Buzz give it that Anderson Garcia guy? Give that just over
he can really play.
Is a good player. You know what I'm saying? No, that's people are accusing Lincoln Riley of doing that with the Pittsburgh receiver if he actually enters the portal. So Pittsburgh fans want to sue Lincoln Riley and USC for tortuous interference. It's like, oh, it's great, man. As much as the portal has just changed things completely and sort of made them maddening, I tell you what, it's brought out the best in fans.
I mean, how about just last week in terms of the portal? Not even that. Look at what happened with Isaiah Wong on the basketball side, on the Miami side. I still could not even tell you what happened there, but his agent putting out a story or putting out a tweet that said, he was transferring if he didn't.
Yeah, he was threatening to transfer if his NIL didn't go up. Yeah,
and then him coming out and releasing the statement saying that his agent, he didn't give his agent any authorization to put that out there and negotiate it that way.
But then he also in his statement, he mentioned one of the people he had an NIL deal with. Exactly. I don't remember who it was. He's like, I'm happy with Avis Rent-A-Car, whoever it was. And it's like, sounds like maybe they upped your deal and said, hey, throw our name in that. Throw our name in your statement, make sure it gets out there.
I'll just say this. Has there been
allegedly, I should say. I have to say that.
Allegedly. Yeah, allegedly. Allegedly. Not trying to get us in trouble here.
Legal if you're watching this. I said allegedly.
We're going strong here, Brian.
Yes, we are.
I was gonna say, like in April and May, has there ever been any more excitement in April and May than the transfer portal has created with NIL and all that? It's just been like the perfect pot. I think the NCAA was up to something here when they wanted. We're like, how can we extend the offseason excitement to create
Yeah,
more
they're like, yeah,
storyline?
like March Madness is over. What's
Yeah,
next for us?
yeah, what's
Before
next for
College
us?
World Series.
And
Oh,
you
we'll
know,
make this portal
we'll make
season.
the portal with immediate eligibility, and we'll throw NIL into the mix and just see how that all kind of
Yeah,
works
I'd be
out.
like, oh, if you don't decide by May 1st, so May 1st is now the drop dead date. So it built a lot of excitement.
And then
So
you got Mark Emmert just kind of, announce he's stepping down next year. Just kind of create the system and then step back. And
yeah, no, for sure. I'm just
and
curious. So all these guys are transferring this year. Is next year it's going to be really quiet because everybody's already used their one free transfer?
well, that's the thing
Anybody
is
that was
like,
going to transfer, it's going to be a lot quieter.
honestly, I think because, well, and I mean, it's just so interesting because when you think about it with the transfer portal, like you don't have to announce it. And we haven't even gotten into the part about the extra COVID year. I mean, when you talk
Yeah.
about numbers and using the extra COVID year, you don't have to make that decision until you get to the end of your eligibility. And so, I mean, a coach is kind of sitting there with transfer portal and your one-time eligibility. I didn't know that, and shout out to Chris Summer for the help on this one. That graduate transfers now do have to announce by May 1st if they're going to enter the portal as well. There was apparently a little bit of confusion about that at the beginning, but graduate transfers do have to enter the portal by May 1st as well, and so that at least gives you a little bit of stability. But I'm with you. I just think it's kind of here to stay, and this is kind of the way it's going to be because think about it. These kids have used their 1 year, but there's a whole freshman class coming in and a sophomore class now that haven't used their year of eligibility as well. That if they're not getting
A lot of
playing
them have
time,
already transferred, though. There's a lot
yeah,
of class of 2021 guys that are in the portal now, and so now they're stuck wherever they end up. I mean, you could transfer again, but you have to sit out a year. But
right. And
I
the other
mean,
thing, I mean, I think the other component to this that kind of was an interesting dynamic is they haven't had a chance. They didn't get the chance to take visits to a lot of the schools that they were going to, and so you kind of already sensed there were maybe going to be a lot of transfers because of that.
no, for
And
sure. I've shared this story before, but Tyreek Chappelle was an
yep,
early enrollee at A&M. He's from Philadelphia. He was getting on a plane to enroll at A&M in January of 2021.
yeah,
And I'm talking to him. He said, "I've never been to Texas before." So not only had he never been to A&M, he had never been to the state of Texas. Now he had a big first year, freshman All American. So he's likely to stay. But let's say he didn't play much this past year. Well,
true.
now he's in a completely foreign place. He's never been. Doesn't really know anybody. He has a high school teammate, but let's say he doesn't really know anybody. Well, he's a guy that would have been a candidate to just be like, all right, man. Well, I'm not. Don't love it there. I'm so far away from home, and then go back closer to home. So yeah, you almost have to play those freshmen right away, especially like you said, if they haven't been on campus or haven't taken the visits before.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's a chance to get closer to home, and and there's just it's going to be it's made it a year round job for coaches to at the end of the year you really just have to re-recruit your entire roster, to be honest with you. And at
Oh
the end of
yeah,
spring, you kind of have to make your decisions based on where who do you want to keep, who do you not want to keep, but you got to re-recruit your whole roster because with the transfer portal and the opportunity to go play. And don't be wrong, for some kids, there's times when the transfer portal is probably best for folks to get more playing time, and if they're going to get an opportunity somewhere else. But for a lot of your guys, you really do have to recruit most of the roster.
no. So it used to be freshmen once they signed, or high school seniors once they signed, they're locked in. And it was like a reality check because they show up on campus and they're expecting to be wined and dined and everything. Like they were in the recruiting process. The coaches are their best friend. Well, all of a sudden now it's like, wait, what is your name? And they're just on the bottom of the depth chart. You ignore them. I mean, it's just sort of a rite of passage for freshmen. Well, yeah, now try doing that now. And they're out. They're going to bounce after a semester.
Yeah.
But maybe these transfers are showing up at their new spot and they're the new freshmen because they can't transfer without sitting out a year. So you can treat those guys, be like, okay, like Max Johnson, he could show up and now you just do, treat him like a freshman. Like, who are you? They're not going to do that, obviously, but you could do that and get away with it, where you cannot do that. You're gonna some of these freshmen are going to have to be babied when they were not in the past.
Yeah, no doubt. There's zero doubt, and it's something that I think is kind of here to stay. I know for some fans, it really frustrates them, but it's here to stay, and it's going to be something coaches just have to deal with on a year-round basis. When with everything going on now, it's going to be it's going to be something fascinating to watch. So, um, you know, with that, I mean, I think we could spend probably a whole podcast on just the transfer portal and immediate eligibility and all
Oh
that.
yeah.
But with that, I think
Tune
we're
in next week for our transfer portal podcast, first ever.
yeah next week we're gonna have a transfer portal.
Yeah, yeah.
We're gonna discuss optimal transfer portal destinations.
If A&M gets more active in the portal, yeah, we will. We might have to have a
We
little
will have an active.
side podcast, but
The thing about it though is when you look at all this talk about the transfer portal and all that, A&M signed like two guys out of the transfer portal in 2 years.
yeah,
And, just with as much movement and as much wackiness has been going on, I mean, Jimbo Fisher kind of talked about we haven't really need to use not that we won't use it, but we're going to use it if we need it. But it goes to show you where, I mean, I thought he also brought up a good point that if you recruit a guy from the transfer portal, well, now you're recruiting over a guy that you might have recruited in high school and pitched on playing time developing in
yeah.
high school. And, you're not doing a great job developing guys in high school. And I think that's kind of where their focus has been, is develop the guys that we got out of high school and make sure we're locked in on that front. And then where we need to clean up holes, we will. But they really haven't used it a whole lot.
No, the one benefit of the portal to A&M is getting players off of the roster that aren't contributors.
Yeah.
Clearing room for. I mean, Jimbo wants to sign 25-man class every year, 32-man this past year when they upped it. So if he wants to do that, you have to get rid of guys. Well, it used to be before. It's tough luck. Sorry, go find a new home, or if you can. Well, now at least there's an avenue to do that, and without them having to sit out. So it's made it easier for players, and I think it's probably easier to have that conversations with them. Say, he's told players, hey, here's the deal. You stay here, you're not going to play. Like, I'm just going to be completely honest with you. Like, you're down on the depth chart, and players, I think they
I
respect
appreciate
that. But
that. Yeah.
before that was tough to hear, and you're like, I'd have to sit out. So, maybe I'll just stay here, and take up the scholarship. Now you're like, all right, well, I'll go to FCS or just not, non-power 5, group of 5 and play. And guys have done that. I mean, Kellen Deach, Josh Rogers, Trayvon Fuller. I mean, several A&M guys that transferred, signed undrafted free agent offers in the league, and so them getting new opportunities with their new teams,
Even
it worked the best for both programs.
even Nick Starkel, a guy that, kind of lost out in the quarterback battle. And then, he signed a deal, I believe, with the Jets. And so, he went on to have another couple opportunities and will now get his chance in the NFL. And so like you mentioned, it's, he's honest with guys about where they sit on the depth chart. And, they want to develop as many guys as they can and have a deep roster that's built on the foundation of freshmen. But the transfer portal. He's used the transfer portal as benefit in that way as well.
Okay, sorry for my aside. You can
No,
do
you're good.
our closing music.
On that, yeah, we're coming up close to an hour. I think this might be our longest one we've done yet. But we'll be back next week. Brian and I will be on the road quite a bit this week, hitting up several high schools. I'll be over in the Tyler area on Thursday. I'll be seeing, as I mentioned, Marcus Deal early this week. DeSoto has got their college night. I know, Brian, you'll be swinging through the San Antonio area.
San Antonio and Austin, seeing a bunch of guys. So, yeah.
Yeah. So we'll have plenty of updates coming up on that over on the site and more to discuss next week as well. And we'll maybe mix in more transfer portal talk, depending on depending what happens this week. I know the transfer portal should quiet down now with that May 1st deadline. I think John Rothstein tweeted, we sleep in May. So but I'm sure we'll get the crazy transfer portal story this week. So with that, hope everyone has a great week, and don't forget to give us a like and 5-star review on Spotify and iTunes. Mash that like, subscribe button on on YouTube to get an update every time a new video goes out. And with that, we'll see you guys next week, and have a great week.